What destroys your life is not what happens around you, but what your mind keeps repeating within you, silently, day after day. This truth was spoken thousands of years ago, but people did not listen, or perhaps they were never allowed to listen. The secret has been hidden, protected, even feared, and yet it has always been waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Here is the first part of it. If a thought can make you sick, then a thought can also heal you. But very few ever reach the place where this becomes real, because it requires something rare, something almost no one does. That is why so many live trapped, suffering, repeating the same cycles, imprisoned not by the outside world, but by their own mind. That prison has a name, and the key to breaking it lies in the words of Thoth that were once considered too dangerous to be spoken freely. The moment you understand this, your field of energy begins to shift. Your mind is not your enemy, but it can become one if left unguided. And your mind can also be your healer once it reconnects to its true purpose. Most people feel the weight of something wrong inside themselves, an ache in the body, a heaviness in the emotions, a strange sense of being sabotaged by forces they cannot see or explain. They turn to distractions, to medicine, to denial, but the true root always remains in the same place. The mind. A mind not guided by higher truth becomes sick, but when it is guided by wisdom, it brings health to the body. The ancients said everything the mind heals, the spirit seals. You can wear a smile, pretend nothing touches you, but if your mind is filled with fear, anger, resentment, or thoughts of failure, your body obeys those hidden commands without question. The ancient Hermetic schools taught that everything physical begins as vibration. The law of correspondence declares, as above, so below, as within, so without. This means that thoughts are not just ideas floating in the air. They are vibrations, fields, patterns. When those vibrations are heavy, destructive, or filled with resentment, they first disturb your emotions, then your energy, and finally they break down into your body. Modern science calls this psychosomatic illness, but long before science gave it a name, the ancients already understood it. Thoth said the body is the temple of the spirit, and that illness begins as a rupture between the mind and the divine. When the link to the higher self breaks, the body becomes like poisoned soil, absorbing residue instead of nourishment. It never happens suddenly. It is a slow, silent process. A pain in your back, nights without sleep, irritation in your skin, exhaustion that will not leave. You blame the weather, food, work, or stress, but the true cause is deeper. The same thought circuits running endlessly, every day, without interruption. Thoughts repeated over and over are not just mental noise. They are fields of energy that soak into you, like smoke that stains the walls of a house. At first, you hardly notice, but slowly the walls darken, the air becomes heavy, the foundation weakens. One day you wake up drained, sick, without energy, not realizing your body has simply been following the script your mind has been writing all along. If you repeat to yourself that life is dangerous, that you are unworthy of love, that your destiny is to fail, your body accepts these as truth and acts them out. It manifests symptoms not to punish you, but to warn you. Illness is often a message. Something is out of alignment. But instead of going to the root, Most people try to silence the body with medication, ignore it with distractions, or fight it with denial. They never return to the field where it began, the unconscious mind, where thought patterns flow without awareness, shaping reality even as you try to escape them. This is why even after therapies, surgeries, or diets, many remain sick. The body attempts to heal, but the mind keeps sending destructive orders. You are unsafe. You are not enough. You are broken. The body sacrifices itself out of obedience to the mind. This is not punishment. It is reflection. The body mirrors the mind. Once you see this clearly, you can no longer ignore the power of thought over every organ, every cell, every beat of your heart. But if distorted thought continues too long, something else happens. Positive thinking loses its power. The same mind that created the damage cannot reverse it by itself. It becomes exhausted, overthinking, collapsing into cycles of self-destruction. The alchemists called this stage putrefaction, the rotting away of the old so something new could be born. But when this stage unfolds without awareness, what should have been transformation becomes collapse. The mind tries to control the uncontrollable, tries to explain the fire while the house burns down. It clings to pain because pain feels familiar, and what is familiar feels safe, even if it is destructive. That false safety drains life. Energy fades. Exhaustion becomes normal. Numbness becomes routine. Disconnection from the present moment becomes the default. What people call a phase is not a phase at all. It is a slow collapse. And yet, even in collapse, there is a way back. A small crack always remains. A subtle opening where reversal is possible. It is fragile, but if you notice it in time, it becomes the doorway to a new path. At this point, one path alone will not heal you. No single medicine, affirmation, or technique will be enough, because the imbalance was built in many layers, and the restoration must reach all of those layers. You need everything: thought, awareness, food, medicine, rest, silence, spirit, breath, energy, presence. Real healing happens through integration, not reduction. It is never just one thing. Thoth taught that everything divided, fragmented, or broken must be reconciled in the fire of one, which is awakened consciousness. True consciousness does not reject pain, but it also does not cling to it. It does not deny physical treatment, but it does not worship it either. It recognizes spirit, mind, and body as one living field. This is what real healing is. Not taking pills while holding on to decades of resentment. Not repeating affirmations while your body cries for rest. Not relying only on medicine while your mind poisons your cells with fear. True healing is alchemy. It is inclusion. It takes everything: your mistakes, your pain, your medicine, your silence, your tears, your food, your breath, and turns them into agents of transformation. Nothing is wasted. Everything, once touched by awakened consciousness, can become light. Everything in life can be transformed when it serves the growth of consciousness. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is thrown away. Nothing is meaningless. Every experience, whether painful or joyful, carries within it the possibility of being transmuted into light when it is brought into awareness. This is where the struggle begins, because the ego cannot understand this process. The ego wants to fix things quickly. It wants to find the perfect method, the secret formula, the instant relief that will make everything neat and controllable. But the soul's process cannot be rushed, and when the ego tries to take over, it only delays what is meant to happen. The ego works in separation, and healing only takes place in unity. That is why so often, before you feel better, you feel worse. The buried pieces of yourself, the parts you denied, start to rise. Old memories that were locked away emerge. The body begins to let go of what it has carried for years. And if you don't understand this, you will believe you are failing when in truth you are rediscovering yourself. You are reorganizing. You are reintegrating. But this takes courage, because facing what you have hidden for so long is not easy. Real healing requires honesty and humility. It requires admitting that maybe you spent years believing you could carry it all by yourself, that you could ignore your body, that you could silence your soul, that you could cover over the truth with positive words while something inside of you was crying for air. Yet now the moment has come when you can no longer live in denial. For real change to begin, something must stop immediately. A hidden cycle that has been sabotaging every attempt at growth. That cycle is self-betrayal. Self-betrayal does not appear as some dramatic act. It works in silence. It happens when you feel something true but push it away. When your intuition speaks clearly, but you bury it under logic. When your body asks for rest, but you tell it there is no time. Little by little you wound the deepest part of yourself, the spark within, the divine presence the ancients called the nous. This spark does not shout, it does not argue, it simply radiates truth. But when you let your mind run endlessly, filling all space with noise, that spark gets buried. You forget what you really want. You forget what it feels like to be at peace. The most cruel act is not sickness, nor failure. The most cruel act is suffocating that inner spark, cornering it with fears, doubts, and patterns that no longer serve you. Worse still, the world has taught you to normalize this suffocation, calling it responsibility, adulthood, or reality. But it is not normal. It never was. This silent torture is what causes collapse of spirit. When the mind climbs into the seat of the soul, everything falls out of balance. The body begins to fail. Emotions lose their brilliance. Life becomes mechanical, a gray hallway of repeated actions without presence. Yet that divine spark does not leave you. It waits. It is patient. It cannot run away or disappear. But the longer you ignore it, the more despair begins to creep in. You can surround yourself with books, methods, and teachings, but something will always feel missing if you abandon that inner flame. And that missing piece is you, your real self. The deepest mistake is not failing in practice or falling short in choices. The real mistake is leaving behind the very being within you that has always been there, quietly waiting for a gesture of reconnection. Sometimes, when this spark is buried too long, a darker thought appears. It does not come as a scream, but as a whisper, disguised almost as relief. What if it all ended right now? This thought does not arrive from evil. It rises when the mind, unable to bear the pressure, longs to shut down the system. It wants to escape the collapse it cannot control. This stage has been known for centuries in alchemy as Negredo, the black night of the soul. It is the moment of dissolution, when the old has fallen away, the new has not yet arrived, and everything feels meaningless. All reference points vanish. You float in a space where nothing makes sense. This stage is terrifying, but it is also sacred, because what dies here is not you. What dies is the illusion, the mask, the false self. This symbolic death clears the way for rebirth. And if you can walk through this without identifying with the darkness, everything begins to change. The pressure inside turns into strength. The collapse turns into revelation. Pain transforms into a sacred signal. Pain, when listened to with an awakened heart, is not punishment. It is an invitation. It is a code, a spiritual alarm that signals transformation is near. The dark thought is not the end. It is a portal. It is a crossing. It marks the threshold where the old dissolves and the true self begins to emerge. When you make it through this stage, thought itself is transformed. It stops being reaction and becomes creation. It no longer spins with doubt and fear. It becomes still, clear, and powerful. It does not plead or ask. It emits. It vibrates at the frequency of truth, touching directly the field that organizes reality. And reality responds. The body reorganizes. The field aligns. Chaos loses its grip. But this kind of thought can only emerge after the ego has collapsed, after the soul has returned to its rightful place on the throne. The greatest obstacle to this transformation is not weakness, but escape. Even those who long for healing often continue to run from pain, from silence, from themselves. And the world offers endless ways to escape. Screens, tasks, entertainment, noise. But all these distractions weaken your focus, and focus is the channel of healing. The ancients taught that the void within, the pause, the silence, the stillness, is the true portal. Not a void of despair, but a void of listening. Modern life tries to fill every space to keep you from entering this inner temple, because once you go inward, the outer systems lose their control. Healing begins not with doing, but with stopping, with listening, with allowing silence. And even when it feels like nothing is happening, something is. In that stillness, the inner world awakens. The external slows down. The internal begins to respond. The mind, once an enemy, becomes a servant again. No longer a prison. It becomes a tool. No longer draining energy. It begins to channel it. You no longer fight to force life into shape. You become the space where life flows into order by itself. When this happens, everything shifts. Fear loses power. Internal noise settles. The world outside may look the same, but your perception has changed, and that changes everything. This is the beginning of regeneration. The awakened eye no longer sees the world as it appears, but as it vibrates. And by holding beauty in your perception, you invite the world to reorganize around that frequency. Blocks turn into openings. Chaos slows. Life responds not by force, but by resonance. At this point, you remember the truth. The mind was never meant to rule. It was always meant to serve. And when it serves the soul, it becomes radiant, aligned, and creative. And without realizing it, you reclaim the throne of your inner creation. You see clearly. You were always in command. You had only forgotten. And there is no shame in forgetting. Forgetting is part of the path. Mistakes are not failures. They are part of the journey itself. Pain is not a punishment sent to break you. It is a tool that shapes you. Every challenge, every wound, every disappointment you've carried has not been random. They are steps along a hidden staircase, preparing you, shaping you, pressing you closer and closer to your true center, the place inside you that no storm can shake. At first, it feels unfair. It feels like the world is against you, like life keeps throwing weights on your back until you can barely stand. But slowly, as you begin to awaken, you start to see the truth. Those very struggles are what trained your strength, what forced you to dig deeper than you thought possible, what brought you face to face with your soul. This is what it means to be initiated into truth. At some point, the seeker finally understands. The goal is not to destroy the mind. You were never meant to silence it into nothingness, to crush it, or to exile it. The mind is not your enemy, though for many years it may have felt like one. The mind is a wild horse, full of power and energy, but without guidance it will run in circles until it collapses. The path is not to kill the horse, but to train it, consecrate it, and bring it under the leadership of your spirit. You consecrate it by treating it as sacred, by respecting its power. You educate it with truth, with wisdom, with practices that lift it instead of feeding its chaos. You redirect it again and again when it wants to run toward poison, fear, or despair. This is not easy, but this is where true healing begins. There is an ancient saying, whispered through generations, the one who rules the mind rules the gods. What does this mean? It means that the mind, once aligned, becomes a bridge to the highest realms. When the mind is guided by spirit, it is no longer a prison. It becomes a channel through which wisdom, inspiration, and creativity flow. It becomes a sacred river, carrying the waters of heaven down into human life. When the mind serves the spirit, it no longer destroys, it creates. It no longer poisons, it heals. You were not born to be trapped by your thoughts. You were not born to live intoxicated by the endless chatter in your head. You were not born to repeat the same fears, the same worries, the same cycles until your life passes you by. You were born to govern thought. You were born to take your seat of authority over it. You were born to tune into the vibration that organizes reality itself and learn how to turn that vibration into medicine for your body, for your mind, for your spirit, and even for the world around you. Think about this truth. If thought has the power to make you sick, then thought, at the right frequency, has the power to heal you. If fear and stress can weaken the body, then peace and love can restore it. If negative cycles of the mind can keep you trapped for years, then aligned cycles of truth can set you free. This is the place where choice becomes unavoidable. You cannot claim ignorance anymore. You must choose. Will you keep feeding the poison, or will you begin to omit the antidote? This moment of choice is what the ancients called the return to the throne. But do not mistake this throne for a throne of ego. It is not the seat of pride, arrogance, or control. It is not the throne that demands attention or rules with fear. No, this is a silent throne, the throne of awakened consciousness. It is the place of stillness inside you where awareness watches without judgment. It is the throne of coherence, where your thoughts, your emotions, your words, and your actions line up with each other and move in harmony. This throne is not loud, but its authority is undeniable. When you sit there, life begins to respond. People treat you differently. Circumstances shift. Paths open. Synchronicities multiply. The world rearranges itself around the energy of coherence. The mind will always try to wander. It will pull you toward fear, doubt, resentment, or comparison. And when you are unaware, it will drag you with it. But when you reclaim your throne, you realize the mind is not your master. It is your servant. It is a tool waiting for direction. Without your leadership, it becomes chaotic, echoing old wounds, repeating lies, magnifying problems until you feel overwhelmed. But when you lead it, when you step into awareness, the mind becomes a channel for creativity, a vessel for solutions, a clear lens through which the spirit shines. It stops being a prison and becomes an instrument, a sacred tool that helps you shape reality. So how do you return to this throne in daily life? It begins with something as small as breath. One deep breath, in and out, can be the first act of reclaiming. That breath interrupts the storm of thoughts. It signals to your body, we are safe, we are aware, we are here. Then, in the space that opens, you name what you see. I notice fear in my chest. I notice anger in my mind. Naming breaks the illusion. It reminds you that you are not the thought. You are the one watching the thought. From there, you tell a truer story. You shift from I always fail to I am learning. From I am powerless to I still have choices. From I am broken to I am healing. You don't lie to yourself. You don't paste fake positivity over your wounds. You simply choose a story that is closer to truth and more useful to your spirit. Then you act. You take one step that embodies the new thought. You send the message you were avoiding. You drink the water your body has been craving. You step outside and feel the sun. You begin the task you've been procrastinating. Each action reinforces the throne. Each small alignment builds coherence. And coherence, practiced daily, becomes power. You begin to see the difference between poison and antidote. Poison looks like spirals of worry, voices of self-hate, hours lost in distraction, constant comparison. Antidote looks like gratitude spoken out loud, like truth told even when shaky, like breaths taken deeply until calm returns, like focus brought back 10 times in a row until presence becomes normal again. Poison drains your energy, fogs your clarity, and weakens your body. Antidote strengthens your nervous system, clears your mind, heals your cells, and opens your spirit. And here lies the great truth. Whatever you practice grows. If you keep practicing poison, it multiplies. If you keep practicing the antidote, it multiplies too. Day by day, repetition turns into habit, and habit turns into your natural state. That is how you return to the throne, not in one dramatic moment, but in hundreds of small acts of coherence that become your foundation. The invitation today is simple but powerful. Declare your choice. If you have followed this far, then type the words, "My mind now serves me." Do not treat this as just a line of text. Treat it as an activation, a seal, a contract with yourself. When you write it, when you say it, you are reclaiming the throne of your consciousness. You are telling the universe, I have remembered who I am. I am no longer ruled by thoughts. My thoughts now bow to me. This phrase matters because words are spells. Every sentence you speak shapes your inner atmosphere. Every word is a seed. When you write, "My mind now serves me," you are planting the seed of freedom. And if you water it with practice, it will grow into a new reality. If this message has touched you, if it has awakened something in your heart, and you feel called to support, know that there is a link in the first pinned comment where you can contribute any amount to help this channel grow and reach more souls who are searching for reminders like this. Every act of support, big or small, matters. But even if you give nothing, even if you simply watched until the very end, that alone is already a gift. Your attention is precious, and I am grateful for it. You can also share this message with someone who needs it. Think of the people in your life who are drowning in their minds, who have forgotten their throne. Send this to them, not as pressure, but as a reminder. You may never know how much that small act could change their day, their year, or even their life.